Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 282 to 2784 based on novel. So let's start. There was a compass in the Daoist's hands, and he seemed to be chanting while the compass was clacking as it turned, transforming into runes. The monk held a string of prayer beads, and the beads turned continuously. When two prayer beads collided, they gave off a soft tap. The other hand lifted up a black-colored alms bowl, and inside the bowl were a few spirit pills. He didn't know if they were obtained from begging. Both of their clothes were tattered. The Daoist's clothes were turning white from washing repeatedly, and there were even a few patches. However, it could be considered clean. On the other hand, the monk's clothes didn't seem to be patched, and wind was leaking out from all places. From the looks of it, both of them weren't having an easy life. Qin Mu couldn't help falling in doubt. There are already Taoists and monks in this era. Founding Emperor was also stunned when he noticed the monk and the Daoist. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor both went forward only to hear the monk talking to the Daoist. The Jade Pool meeting is still better. I've managed to beg for a few spirit pills. At least I can have food, clothing, and expenses. Qin Mu looked at him with a weird expression. The Daoist said, "Don't speak first. I've just thought of an algebra question. Wait for me to finish calculating." The monk said with a smile, "What is the use of you calculating? Why don't you follow me? Once my dream enters the path, there will be everything in my dream. The transformations in the boundless worlds, one will be able to find the true essence of Tao from there." The Daoist didn't even raise his head and continued to move the compass. Dreams are still illusions, after all. Only algebra is the true great Tao. I feel everything in the universe is built on the basis of algebra. As long as I master algebra, I will be able to understand all the marvels in this universe. Algebra will definitely shine in the future. As the monk was waiting to speak, he saw Qin Mu and Founding Emperor walking over and hurriedly moved the black alms bowl to their faces and shook it. The few spirit pills inside the alms bowl rattled. "Brought together by fate or not, can you spare me some? We brothers have been starving for a few days," said the monk. Founding Emperor had a weird expression. He rummaged through his traveling bag and took out a few spirit pills to put inside the alms bowl. Kindness begets kindness. The monk smiled and looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu also took out some spirit pills to fill the metal alms bowl. The monk shook his head. "There's no need for so much. My begging is for cultivation. I just need rations for a day. Giving me more just means I will be delaying my cultivation for the next few days." After saying that, he took out the excess spirit pills and returned them to Qin Mu. Qin Mu didn't take them back, and he said with a smile, "Venerable, this is what you deserve. We are very fated. In the future, when you meet a person called Mu, you will naturally understand." The monk looked at him and said, "Why doesn't benefactor make yourself clear?" Qin Mu shook his head and said, "Grand dreams. How do you know you are not in a dream now? Why do I need to make myself clear? There are boundless worlds in a dream, and the dream transforms into all living things. Venerable will be clear in the future." The monk was puzzled, and he smiled. "Grand dreams. That has quite the samadhi of my Tao." Qin Mu looked at the Daoist who was studying diligently, and the compass of the Daoist was very complicated. The change in mathematical sciences had already involved the core problem in computation canon of supreme mystery. However, if he wanted to create a computation canon out of nothing, it was naturally incomparably difficult. It was the hardest to start from scratch, and furthermore, there was no one who could deduce a complete book of algebra. Qin Mu stretched his hand and plucked on the compass. That Daoist had planned to smack his hand away when he got stunned when he saw the compass. He became overjoyed. "Yeah, this problem that had plagued me for days is actually solved just like this. Excellent, excellent. This senior brother, how did you think of this solution? He had a fervent gaze and looked at Qin Mu. He was waiting excitedly for Qin Mu to explain his line of thought. Qin Mu said righteously, I've received advice from Daoist and only then was I able to think of such a solution. Much thanks. He bowed and expressed his thanks. Daoist hurried said, Why are you thanking me for helping me to solve my problem? Qin Mu said with a smile, You will know in the future. Daoist, when you meet a person called Mu in the future, he will mention about this to you. Daoist was stunned. Qin Mu smiled slightly and pushed them aside to head to the palaces in front. Founding Emperor hesitated for a moment and followed after Qin Mu. He said softly, Your intentions are crooked and aren't you currying favor too much? That monk and that Daoist just now should be those two existences in the future, right? Now you are giving them a few spirit pills and plucking his compass, because you want to borrow their power in the future. If you use these intentions on your... Qin Mu intercepted his words and said, If you didn't use these thoughts on guessing my intention, and use it on your future, maybe you wouldn't. Founding Emperor was slightly stunned. Wouldn't what? Qin Mu had a sorrowful expression and shook his head. Nothing much. I just guessed that they are the future Brahma and Tao master of Tao sect. You should go and befriend them, they will return this good karma in the future. Founding Emperor seemed to ponder and probed. You know me. You know what would happen to me in the future. You are from an era after mine. He was smarter than normal people. Even though Qin Mu had said a sentence or two that seemed to be unimportant, he could deduce even more information from these few words. Qin Mu shook his head and said, I don't know which is the real you. I've never met you before. Go back and find both of them. Founding Emperor hesitated and shook his head. I'm not like you, I won't purposely do it. If I purposely do it, I might change the future, when the future changes, I might not even be born and cease to exist. I've said before, I'm just a passerby here to witness history. I would like to meet the founders of the future civilization very much. The old bull followed behind them and frowned when he heard their conversation. Just a moment ago, these two looked like they couldn't wait to beat each other to death, and now they were talking intimately. The heart of a man is like the weather in the 6th month, it changes at whim. The old bull hesitated and looked at that monk and Daoist. He thought to himself, should I go befriend them? I might be able to get some benefits in the future. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor had already walked away, so he couldn't care about befriending the monk and the Daoist. He hurriedly caught up to Qin Mu while thinking to himself, we have a few months anyway, once both of their emotions have stabilized, I will then make friends with these ancient predecessors and reap the benefits. When that time comes, even old master will see me in a different light. The monk and the Daoist saw them off, and they shook their heads. The Daoist said, truly a weird man. However, this person's algebra seems to be better than mine, but his heart doesn't lie here. Senior brother, after his guidance, I feel I'm almost finding my Tao. The monk nodded and said with a smile, I'm also about to find my Tao. Both of them looked at each other and laughed loudly. Qin Mu, Founding Emperor, and the old bull entered the palace in this jade pool secret territory, and they saw people walking to and fro. The place was bustling with activity, but they couldn't find Son of Heaven Yin at all. He must have gone to find Celestial Venerable Yu. Celestial Venerable Yu had invited him for the meeting, so their relationship shouldn't be shallow. There was an extremely high number of people who had come to attend the meeting, and most of them were discussing what Celestial Venerable Yu was going to announce. Some said Celestial Venerable Yu had created the 8th divine treasure, while some said Celestial Venerable had found a way for primordial spirit to not die. Some even said Celestial Venerable was planning to get married. There were all kinds of guesses. Qin Mu looked around and saw numerous divine arts practitioners gathering together in groups. They talked excitedly about what they had comprehended and learned, showing off the paths, skills, and divine arts they had just comprehended. He and Founding Emperor listened for a moment. The paths, skills, and divine arts were very rough and simple. It was far from being as intricate as the paths, skills, and divine arts from the future, so it wasn't really a big deal to them. However, to this era, that wasn't a small deal. If we talked about the techniques and divine arts of the future civilization, it would probably invoke huge astonishment. Qin Mu shook his head. The paths, skills, and divine arts of the future civilization were too intricate. If he told the people of this era, it was a small matter if he shocked the world. However, the change to the future would be too terrifying. He couldn't risk this danger. He looked at Founding Emperor, and Founding Emperor had also guessed he was a person from the future, thus, he told him not to try and change the past. Thinking about it, Founding Emperor's words had their own logic. Everyone who had attended the meeting was entranced, and there would always be someone explaining their own path, skills, and divine arts. It was truly 100 schools of thought contending against one another. Some of these marvelous thoughts also suddenly stunned Qin Mu and Founding Emperor. They couldn't help listening in detail, because those were shapes of divine arts that they had never thought about. Because the people of the future generations were already located in a fixed cultivation system of divine treasures, they didn't have to work their brains, and just cultivated accordingly to how their predecessor had done. They could also reach very high achievements, but it lacked creativity instead. However, there weren't so many rules in this era, so it was very easy to jump out of the cultivation system of divine treasures, thus having paths, skills, and divine arts that were inconceivable to Qin Mu and Founding Emperor. However, the reason why the future generations couldn't see these paths, skills, and divine arts wasn't because these divine arts that had died out weren't good enough. It was just because they had failed when trying to compete with the cultivation system of divine treasures, thus, they had died out. The cultivation system of divine treasures was the easiest to learn and the easiest to be accepted by everyone. It had stood through the test of time. When most people cultivated the divine treasures, people who cultivate other paths would drop in number, and their inheritance would become harder and harder to be passed down, eventually dying out. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor squeezed around in the crowd, wanting to listen to some more useful ideas, when they heard a voice. Celestial Venerable Ling. Celestial Venerable Ling. When you said time doesn't exist earlier, what is the principle? Qin Mu and Founding Emperor looked over at literally the same time, and saw numerous divine arts practitioners surrounding a woman. That woman was dressed simply, and there was a peachwood hairpin on her head. She wore straw shoes on her feet, a leopard skirt, and a short unlined garment. Even though she didn't care about her appearance, she had another kind of beauty to her that looked wild. Celestial Venerable Ling that opened up 6 directions divine treasure is a woman. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor were slightly stunned. That woman was explaining her logic, and she said calmly, anything, including space, are substances. Divine art, that is also the arrangement of substances, to use particles of vital qi to form different combinations that expound the principle of the great Tao, forming power. Is time a substance? It isn't, you can't touch time, thus, time doesn't exist. Everyone fell into deep thought. Some people shook their heads, and yet they couldn't think of a rebuttal. Qin Mu walked forward and said, Celestial Venerable Ling, so why would we grow old? The people of the world would grow old and die. Aren't they growing old with the passage of time? Celestial Venerable Ling saw him walking over, and she suddenly took out her hairpin. That peachwood had already withered. This senior brother, look at this hairpin. Had it already died from old age? She asked. Qin Mu nodded. Celestial Venerable Ling executed her divine art, and that peachwood slowly turned green before turning red. The peachwood suddenly germinated, and tender flower buds grew out. Peach flowers bloomed from the withered branch that had revived, and soft shoots sprouted out from a few peach leaves. "Have I reversed time?" Celestial Venerable Ling asked with a smile. Qin Mu was stunned, and he shook his head. "You are only using creation divine art to change the structure of the withered wood, reviving it from the dead." "Wait a minute, I understand what you mean." He let out a look of disbelief and cried out, "What you mean is time is our illusion. When we grow old and die, it's just the structure in our corporeal body changing. Time doesn't exist, it's an illusion that's being created from substances changing." Celestial Venerable Ling looked at him with surprise and delight. She said happily, "I've finally met someone that understands me. When I told Celestial Venerable you and the rest about my idea, they said I was just playing around. You are my Tao friend." "That's right, time doesn't exist. If it does, there would be time divine arts in the world. However, there's no time divine art, there's only the illusion formed by the change in substances." "Did you refer to my divine art as creation divine art?" "Creation, well named. How nice." Her thoughts were pure, and when she said how nice, she had expressed it from the depths of her heart. She didn't have to exaggerate. Qin Mu's mind trembled violently, and he stood there dumbstruck. He muttered, "In that case, could someone return to the past?" "The past doesn't exist, what exists is the changing substances." Celestial Venerable Ling's eyes sparkled. "If there's a substance that could return to its form in the past, then one would be able to return to the ancient times. That's what I think. Can you understand me?" Everyone in the surroundings still found it difficult to understand her, and discussions broke out, with most of them being criticisms. Someone said, "Celestial Venerable Ling has gone crazy." Celestial Venerable Ling was furious, and she retorted, "In the future, I will definitely create a kind of divine art that would solidify substances for eternity. As long as one step onto this substance, they will be able to see the past and future of this entire universe." Everyone laughed, and they left while shaking their heads. What Celestial Venerable Ling was saying was too profound and deep, they couldn't understand her at all. They were originally gathered around Celestial Venerable Ling to listen to this talented young woman talked about her comprehension and learning over these years, so they could learn her paths, skills, and divine arts. And now, what Celestial Venerable Ling had explained was beyond profound, which obviously showed that she was mad. If they continued to hear a lunatic talk nonsense, wouldn't they miss the point of coming to the Jade Pool meeting? Soon, the surroundings of Celestial Venerable Ling was empty. Only Qin Mu, Founding Emperor, and the old bull were left. Founding Emperor suppressed his voice and said, "The surging river." Qin Mu was astonished, and he nodded his head. He was bewildered at the same time. The surging river always flowed from the west to the east, never stopping from day to night. This huge river might be the current celestial river, but from the flow of the river, it didn't fit the divine art that Celestial Venerable Ling had described, to solidify the substance for eternity. Unless the water molecules that formed the surging river remained in a solidified state, resulting in the flow being just an idea, and actually, the river was flowing from the past to the future. The river water was always still, and what was moving was the substances around the river water. However, this kind of divine art was simply too inconceivable, and the principles involved were something that Qin Mu already couldn't understand. Maybe, it isn't the surging river that's not moving, it's the fog. He had a faint idea in his mind, but he didn't know how to create this kind of divine art. The surging river seemed to be a point to connect the past, present, and future. He had traveled back in time twice, because he had stepped into the source of the surging river and encountered the fog. This kind of time travel was either caused by the surging river or the fog. Celestial Venerable Ling was still slightly furious, and she sneered. All mediocre people, mediocre talents. When I create a divine art where the substance doesn't change, doesn't move, doesn't transformation, doesn't increase and doesn't decrease, all of you will know that there's no such thing as time. This senior brother, you understand me, am I right? She revealed a hopeful gaze. Sister Ling, I understand you very well. Qin Mu suddenly said, I understand your idea. When a substance changes and returns back to the past, it can allow an old man to reverse his growth back into a youth, and it can even bring back the dead. However, this isn't reversing time, it's reversing substance. Founding Emperor nodded his head. I understand as well. We use creation divine arts to grow plants, to grow animals, to let them grow up quickly, but this isn't time divine arts, they are creation divine arts. Creation divine arts change the arrangements of the substances inside the plants and animals to let them grow up faster. This isn't us bringing them into the future. The old bull didn't understand, so he could only flap his ears and stare widely with a blank expression. Celestial Venerable Ling was very exhausted, and she kicked the worn-out shoes on her feet, showing off her toes. She said, troubled, but they don't understand me at all, they don't believe me. Even Celestial Venerable you and the rest think I'm crazy. Must I stop all of the substances in the world and reverse the flow of the substances, to make them realize they were wrong and I am right? Qin Mu shuddered. Reverse the flow of all the substances in the universe. This woman's idea was truly dangerous. However, no one had such terrifying magic power. Sister Ling, you should continue on this path, maybe sometime in the future, you will meet someone who has returned back to the past through your divine art and proves to the world that their opinion of you is wrong. Qin Mu revealed a smile and encouraged her. Continue to walk down the path, prove that you are right. Celestial Venerable Ling was greatly encouraged, but she shook her head and said sadly, I don't know if I'm able to prove this point. I'm too lonely. Almost everyone says that the Celestial Venerable Ling from back then no longer exists. Only a crazy woman is left. Both of you are among the ones I've met that understands me, let us research together. Her eyes lit up again, and her hopeful gaze landed on them. She said fervently, if I research by myself and have no friends that I can converse with, I'm really afraid I will just give up one day. I don't want to become a crazy woman in the eyes of others. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment, and he shook his head. I don't have much time to stay here. Sister Ling, why don't we do this? We shall stay with you for these few days to discuss and research together. Even though his and my wisdom aren't as high as yours, we can still help to solve some problems. After a few months when we leave, you can decide if you want to be a crazy woman or not. How about that? Founding Emperor's heart stirred and looked at him. He knows we will be leaving after a few months. What else does he know? This fellow seems to understand me very much. Furthermore, he even has some enmity to me. Could he be my future enemy? The person that understands me the most is none other than my opponent. Celestial Venerable Ling's eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, as long as you guys don't find me crazy and slightly sloppy. In that case, I'll be staying with both of you for the next few months. These days, many of my past friends are holding me in disdain. Qin Mu said, I only see Big Sister's soul and not Big Sister's form. In my eyes, Big Sister is a goddess that's unrivaled. Celestial Venerable Ling felt moved, and she still used the wooden hairpin to tie up her hair. My palace is also in the Jade Pool meeting, let us go there and research. Even though Celestial Venerable Yu feels that I'm wrong, he is still pretty nice to me, he gave me a palace. The three of them followed her, and Founding Emperor asked, there are many ancient gods today, and it is the busiest period of Celestial Heaven's meeting. Why is Celestial Venerable Yu able to host a meeting in the Jade Pool? The Jade Pool should be the residence of some ancient god, right? The Jade Pool is the place of pleasure for the chambers of concubines. Celestial Venerable Ling walked forward and said, Celestial Empress admires Celestial Venerable you very much, and since Celestial Emperor and Celestial Empress have to be personally at the Celestial Heavens meeting, she has given the Jade Pool to Celestial Venerable you and allowed him to host the Jade Pool meeting. Celestial Empress admires Celestial Venerable you, so she gave him the Jade Pool to host the Jade Pool meeting. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor looked at each other, and they started thinking. They hadn't met Celestial Venerable you, but to be able to strike up a relation with Celestial Empress, he must be a smooth and slick person with money and power to help him. He shouldn't be just a genius that was able to open up the spirit embryo divine treasure. As they were talking, a voice rang out, Celestial Venerable Ling, are you still researching that divine art in which time doesn't exist? Celestial Venerable Ling stopped in his footsteps, and she had an unhappy expression. This girl wasn't shrewd, and she would just express her feelings on her face. She said unpleasantly, Celestial Venerable Hua, what do you mean by divine art in which time doesn't exist? Qin Mu, Founding Emperor, and the old bull looked at that person talking, and they saw a youth walking over. He was covered in scarlet red markings around his body, and it formed clothes that seemed like fire yet wasn't fire. A strange apparition appeared behind his head, and that was a raised halo that looked like it was formed with flames. They didn't know if it was truly flames. No wonder he is called Celestial Venerable Hua. Qin Mu examined curiously and thought to himself, this is the founder of the celestial being divine treasure. Celestial Venerable Ling's talent has already taken my breath away. So this Celestial Venerable Hua must definitely be extraordinary too. He had already met 2 of the 7 Celestial Venerables, and these 2 people should be on the divine bridge divine treasure. Compared to those ancient gods with remarkable abilities in the celestial heavens, their cultivation wasn't too high. Even if compared with half-gods, the abilities of the 7 Celestial Venerables were considered not good enough. Yet the ones being called Celestial Venerable were these young men and young women. The reason why they were called Celestial Venerable wasn't because of their cultivation, it was because of their achievements. When Celestial Venerable Hua saw Qin Mu, Founding Emperor, and the old bull, he was slightly stunned, but he didn't take it to heart. You are wasting your intelligence on something useless for far too long. Ever since you open up the 6 directions divine treasure, you have had no other achievements, because you are focusing on trying to prove time doesn't exist. With your intelligence and talent, if you don't waste your energy and focus on how to break through the 7 great divine treasures, the first one to break through might have been you. Celestial Venerable Ling shook her head and said, Celestial Venerable you is smarter than me, and is better at studying in greater depth. He is the first person that opened up the divine treasures, and the reason why he has had no activity for the past few hundred years was that he set his gaze on an even further level. He is destined to be the one to surpass the divine treasures, it's not me. Celestial Venerable Hua hated that she wasn't striving for more and said angrily, Celestial Venerable you told me that you are the smartest among the 7 Celestial Venerables. If you had put in effort on the other realm, he would have no part in it. He said it himself. Now, he has already broken through and reached indomitable success, and that is to let divine arts practitioners live forever, to let divine arts practitioners be on par with ancient gods. This success should have been yours. The peachwood hairpin on Celestial Venerable Ling fell off from his aura, and her hair became messy. She took out a ribbon and tied her hair up into a ponytail. She shook her head and said, that is merely a realm. If undying means one can become a god, I could have long stopped divine arts practitioners from dying. Just now this senior brother told me that the divine art I have created is called creation divine art. As long as one cultivates my divine art, their corporeal body can easily not die. Celestial Venerable Hua frowned, and the ring of flame behind his head swayed gently. He looked at Qin Mu and shook his head. You believe the words of a martial world liar. Qin Mu smiled and greeted, unlearned student pays my respect to Celestial Venerable Hua. Celestial Venerable Hua, I have paper and brush here, can you sign your name here? I'm from a small place and have never seen the world before. If I can receive Celestial Venerable Hua's signature, I'll bring honor to my ancestors. He took out paper and brush, sending to the front of Celestial Venerable Hua with a look of anticipation. When Celestial Venerable Hua looked at his sincere expression, he couldn't reject him, so he quickly lifted the brush to write his name on the paper. I don't care where you are from, if you bewitch Celestial Venerable Ling, I won't agree to it. Stop letting her waste her time researching how time doesn't exist and waste her youth. Celestial Venerable Yu has created a realm that could let divine arts practitioners be undying like ancient gods, yet here you are telling her some bullshit creation divine art can do the same thing. If you bewitched her some more, I'll beat you to death. Qin Mu blushed and said, creation divine art is said by me, but I didn't say creation divine art can allow one to be immortal. Celestial Venerable Hua's expression softened and he said, I've wronged you. Qin Mu continued to say, however, creation divine arts can indeed achieve immortality and be undying like gods even if one didn't cultivate to a god. Sister Ling is not wrong about this point. Celestial Venerable Ling said in delight, you are indeed the one that understands me the most. Celestial Venerable Hua's expression sunk, and he said, return my signature to me, I'm not giving it to you anymore. Qin Mu hurriedly kept the brush and paper with a smile. No way, I still have use for it. Celestial Venerable Hua was furious, and he stretched out his hand with a shout. I'll beat you, this bewitching liar, to death first. Qin Mu's body trembled and revealed his three-headed and six-armed form. With a series of collisions, Celestial Venerable Hua crashed through a huge hall and vanished with a tumble. He left behind a path of flames. Founding Emperor was shocked, and he almost cried out. How is a Celestial Venerable on Divine Bridge Realm so weak? Qin Mu was also shocked. He didn't use his full power, and had only used 80 to 90% of his power. However, his attack speed was too fast, and as a result, Celestial Venerable Hua got blown away before his abilities could even be unleashed. However, as a Celestial Venerable on the Divine Bridge Realm, wasn't his abilities a little too weak? Even when compared to the Divine Arts practitioner on the Divine Bridge Realm, he was much inferior. This era is too ancient, and as a result, the paths, skills, and divine arts are still very rough. He exclaimed to himself, I can't use all of my force. If I use all of my force, I may just beat some ancestor-level person to death. Founding Emperor stared at him ruthlessly and suppressed his voice. If you dare to attack again, I won't forgive you. Qin Mu said with a smile and snorted softly. I didn't mean to blow Celestial Venerable Hua away. Also, are your abilities higher than mine? Behind their back, Nyo Sandwa's head was swelling. This is man, they flip their attitude like they flip books. Celestial Venerable Ling was abnormally excited, as he stared at Qin Mu's 3 heads and 6 arms. She rubbed her hands and said with a smile, this is a creation divine art. Your creation divine art is even stronger than mine. Even if you don't cultivate to the realm that Celestial Venerable you opened up, you can also be immortal and be equal to gods. Part 283. The Jade Pool meeting was originally a bustling place, and there were many people everywhere. When Qin Mu blew Celestial Venerable Hua away, it created quite the commotion. More and more people came pouring over. Half-gods could easily blow Celestial Venerable Hua away, but it was definitely impossible for divine arts practitioners to do so. Celestial Venerable Hua was the founder of the Divine Treasures cultivation system, and he was the one who had opened the celestial being Divine Treasure. He had received the blessing of ancient gods, and had very strong cultivation. The only ones who could be on par with him were the other 6 celestial venerables. Furthermore, Celestial Venerable Hua's abilities weren't the weakest among the 7 celestial venerables. Celestial Venerable Hua had mastered the power of fire, and his attainments in fire divine arts were far superior to others. Now that he was easily blown away by Qin Mu, how could that not cause a commotion? Equal to gods. Qin Mu paid no attention to the people pouring over. He tilted his head and pondered. How did the meaning of gods come about? If one could achieve immortality, they could indeed be called a god, just by cultivating creation divine arts. Creation divine arts could allow his corporeal body to be undying and preserve his body so it would never deteriorate. From the looks of his lifespan, he could be on par with the ancient gods. And the method that Celestial Venerable Yu had created should be the Celestial Palace's cultivation system of the future civilization. The 2 kinds of methods had different points. The Celestial Palace's cultivation system had a clear differentiation in realms. One would have to slowly climb up realm by realm to reach Emperor's throne. However, creation divine arts didn't have such clear differentiation, and it was more of using divine arts to reconstruct the body structure, so one could always remain youthful. However, the art of creation was very hard to cultivate, and it was only a divine art. It couldn't be popularized like the Celestial Palace's cultivation system and be accepted by everyone. The limitation of the art of creation is too huge. Qin Mu calculated and said to Celestial Venerable Ling, Sister Ling, even though creation divine arts can make one equivalent to a god, it can't be compared to the method Celestial Venerable Yu has created. It's not that the power is inferior, it's just too difficult to learn. Celestial Venerable Ling said with a smile, those are all mediocre talents, what we seek is the path, so why should we bother about mediocre talents? Your creation divine arts could indeed help me perfect my divine art. We have to study this in detail. She pulled along Qin Mu's hand and squeezed out of the crowd. Right at that moment, Celestial Venerable Hua came flying over with a bang, and he was surrounded with blazing flames which exploded the surrounding air. He shouted, I was careless and got blown away by you. Rascal, once more. Celestial Venerable Ling was pulling Qin Mu by one hand, so he could only face Celestial Venerable Hua's attack with his other 5 fingers. With another loud bang, Celestial Venerable Hua flew away. Founding Emperor was furious, and he shouted with his suppressed voice, I said don't attack anymore. How much commotion do you still want to create? Qin Mu was also slightly furious. He attacked me. If I don't fight back, aren't I going to be hurt? If it were you, would you decide not to retaliate and take the beating? Founding Emperor frowned. Celestial Venerable Hua rushed over again with overflowing anger. Everyone, disperse. There are too many people. I can't unleash my attacks. Everyone suddenly dispersed and left an empty land. Founding Emperor hurriedly said, Celestial Venerable Hua, this is all a misunderstanding. The flames around Celestial Venerable Hua's body burned more and more furiously. He transformed into a 36-yard giant that had boundless power and was coiled with fire dragons. Founding Emperor frowned. Even though Celestial Venerable Hua had quite the attainments in fire divine arts and corporeal body divine arts, they were still slightly shallow to him. Qin Mu broke free of Celestial Venerable Ling's hands and said calmly, Big sister, take a few steps back first. What do you want me to? His second sentence was directed at Founding Emperor. Founding Emperor's body didn't move, and he just stared at him. He said faintly, if you create a big commotion, you and I won't know what changes will happen in the future. Being overcautious, that is you. Qin Mu also stood there without moving and seemed to have a smile that was not a smile. I'm not like you. I don't have so much of a burden on me. Whoever beats me, I'll fight back. Celestial Venerable Hua went to attack, but a 36-yard tall primordial spirit suddenly appeared behind Qin Mu. With 3 heads and 6 arms, it forced back Celestial Venerable Hua. Founding Emperor also had a 36-yard tall primordial spirit behind him which blocked Qin Mu's attack. He couldn't suppress his anger anymore and laughed. "I've long realized you look down on me and keep finding faults with me. In that case, why don't we fight it out?" Qin Mu also couldn't restrain his anger towards Founding Emperor any longer, and his aura burst forth. Qi and blood instantly surged into the sky and swept the winds and clouds. His 36-yard tall, 3-headed, and 6-armed primordial spirit stood in the whirlpool of qi and blood and roared like thunder. "Let's fight then. Do you think I'm scared of you? Come." In the surroundings, countless divine arts practitioners had dazed expression as they looked at the apparitions in the sky with bewildered looks. They couldn't come back to their senses. Strong, too strong. In this era, there was never such strong divine arts practitioners before. Celestial Venerable Hua went to attack once more, but his face turned white when he saw Qin Mu's primordial spirit standing in the current of qi and blood. Impossible, it's impossible to have such strong divine arts practitioners. Founding Emperor's anger couldn't be restrained, and his aura also exploded. He shouted sternly, "What you have done couldn't be any worse. I can't let you do as you like anymore." Boom. His qi and blood rushed into the sky, and his primordial spirit leaped up to step on his qi and blood. It opened up a panoramic view of an overbearing and powerful ruler of an era. Both of their primordial spirits fought in the celestial heavens, and their aura poured forward to suppress the Jade Pool meeting. This made all of the divine arts practitioners in the Jade Pool meeting astonished and frightened. They could only look at that astonishing sight in mid-air with blank expressions. Celestial Venerable Yu and the few Celestial Venerables that were discussing matters in the Jade Pool Golden Hall were also alarmed. They could only raise their heads to look in shock. Such strong primordial spirits, such powerful qi and blood, it brought a spectacular yet bitter feeling. Celestial Venerable Ling was also raising her head to look on in shock. She whispered under her breath, "So strong, how did they cultivate?" The old bull's distressed voice came out from her back. "What should I do, what should I do? These two fellows are both stubborn bulls." "No, that's not right, they are stubborn mules. Bulls aren't stubborn. It will be bad if they start fighting." Celestial Venerable Ling was puzzled. "Didn't all of you come together? You aren't friends." Neo San Duo sighed and shook his head. Both of them want to be friends, but both of them are prideful. They don't want to put their pride aside. The sky suddenly trembled as Qin Mu and Founding Emperor's primordial spirits suddenly exploded with divine arts. The power of those brilliant divine arts raised a hurricane in the sky which blew in all directions. The clouds in the sky were swept away by the violent ripples and vanished. The sky became completely blue. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning crossed one another and struck down like rain. "Your divine art isn't bad." Below, Founding Emperor exerted force to rush at Qin Mu. He sneered. "However, your comprehension of the divine art is still far inferior." His hand flipped, and his divine art contained itself in his palm. Fluttering with his sleeves, countless small divine arts surrounded him. He was the founder of an era, and even though he was still in his youth, he showed all of his overbearing skills and strategy. The most spectacular and charming divine arts of Founding Emperor era were founded by him, and those had held up an era. He was the original creator of the most primitive version of Overlord Body 3 elixir technique that Qin Mu was cultivating. There were countless methods of arrangements for the tens of thousands of divine arts practitioners. They were all divine arts woodcutter had sorted out from Founding Emperor's divine arts. When Qin Mu was on his father Qin Hanjin's ship, The method that condensed the power of divine arts, by a high degree, had come from founding emperor. The power of a divine art could have the mighty power to destroy an area of over 10 miles. When this kind of strength exploded forth, the destruction couldn't be reckoned. Qin Mu let out a loud roar. Other people had 7 great divine treasures, but he could have up to 14 divine treasures that were separated into God and devil. Other than the life and death and divine bridge divine treasures, the rest of the divine treasures were already opened, so there were a total of 10 divine treasures. And those 10 divine treasures had already been refined into one. His vital qi hung down like a waterfall, and ran down this majestic divine treasure like pillars of qi, or even a flood. There were hundreds to thousands of pillars of vital qi circulating, and weaving in the heaven and earth of the divine treasure. Because his divine treasures were one, the speed of his vital qi circulation was even faster than founding emperor. His explosive strength was even stronger, and the power was even higher. Even though his divine art was inferior to founding emperors, he wasn't scared to clash at all. Both of them clashed, and the power of the divine arts burst forth in that instant. Under both of their feet, the white jade slabs floated up in that instant, and both of them were in the center of the circle. Pieces were raised up in circles, and the white jade slabs under the divine arts practitioners standing far away were also raised. They fell backward involuntarily. Bang, bang, bang. Countless violent strikes were like a string of thunder. In that instant where the power burst forth, both of them were blasted away, and smashed into the ground at godly speeds like comets. They crashed into the walls of the 2 huge halls that were 100 miles apart. And in the sky, 2 magnificent primordial spirits moved like lightning and struck at one each other without caring for their lives as streaks of lights appeared in the sky. In the sky, the figures of light crossed each other, and all kinds of apparitions burst forth. There were soaring dragons, phoenixes wheeling in the sky, 10,000 flying swords, knives that split the sky, fist mudras that were like mountains, a long majestic river, and a huge spinning bell. What accompanied all kinds of apparitions were all kinds of marvelous voices, and those were Tao voices coming from the explosion of the divine arts. The roof of those 2 halls exploded open, as Qin Mu and founding emperor rushed into the sky. They landed on the roof and looked at one another from 100 miles away. They crossed their gazes. "Iya!" Qin Mu roared, and his qi rushed into the sky. He suddenly left the hall to step over through the air. Even though he stepped on the air, huge footprints would appear on the ground. He ran in the air like flickering light and passing shadows. With just a step, he unleashed countless punches, and the fist mudras compressed the air to materialize. Huge fists flew towards founding emperor at astonishing speeds, and when the number of fist mudras increased, they formed a thicker and thicker wall. The old bull was alarmed, and he hurriedly shouted, "Qin Yi! Qin Kai, don't fight him with brute force, his skills in the martial path have already reached the peak." On the other side of the hall, founding emperor didn't pay attention to the old bull's words. He moved towards Qin Mu, and his hands moved up and down like fluttering butterflies. Countless small divine arts flew out from his fingertips, fingers, palms, and even under his sleeves. Towers, cauldrons, bells, pagodas, knives, spears, swords, halberds, dragons, tigers, black tortoises, vermilion birds, and all kinds of divine artifacts all flew out in front of him with terrifying power. They were sparkling with light. There was an incomparably terrifying wave in his aura that contained incomparably terrifying power. The old bull's blood ran cold, and he shouted, "Mu Qing, don't fight him with brute force. Qin Kai's skills in the divine arts have already reached the peak." In mid-air, incomparably terrifying waves came over when the fist collided with the divine art. When both of them collided, a snow-bright light burst forth from the center of the explosion. It was like an incomparably sharp knife slashing straight towards the heart of the jade pool treasured island. The ground trembled violently, and a heavenly moat split away the jade pool treasured island. The crack was clean and only grew bigger, longer, and wider. Whoosh! Violent wind swept in all directions, and the glazed tiles on each and every hall were instantly raised up, revealing the dragon bones. Countless jade-green tiles formed jade clouds to fly off in all directions. Primordial spirit possession. Both voices rang at the same time. The violent flood of chi and blood suddenly fell back, as both of their primordial spirits returned back to their body at the same time. Both of their auras were untamed. Qin Mu's corporeal body swelled up to become taller and taller. He was 36 yards tall, and he stood upright like a god. His 6 arms mobilized his power, and his muscles swelled and popped. His 3 heads roared, but he put his 6 palms on the ground, refining treasures into weapons. The ground trembled, and huge halls were crumbling from the shaking land. Bronze pillars rushed into the sky and melted under the flames to transform into flying spirit weapons that were flying swords moving at a rapid speed. On the other side, Founding Emperor clasped his hands in front of his chest, and his aura burst forth. Another huge hall floated and crumbled in mid-air. The divine metal and divine materials transformed into all kinds of shapes, beasts, and treasures before they came rushing over. That was the form of his spirit weapon, after his divine art was settled. Both of them brought out their inner anger, and the methods used in that instant had surpassed a normal duel. The old bull had a huge head. He protected Celestial Venerable Ling and shouted, "Qin Kai, stop fighting him, he's the overlord body, we can't find him." Founding Emperor paid no attention, and the old bull said, "Mu Qing, why are you attacking back? His divine arts are boundless, and you will have a high chance of being killed by him. His strongest skills are sword techniques, divine arts are just a facade." In the sky, both of their ultimate divine arts astonished everyone on the island. They made countless divine arts practitioners of the ancient times dumbfounded as they looked at the 2 divine arts that were about to collide. "Both of you." Neo Sanduo finally couldn't hold himself back. A world-shattering roar came from him. "Have both of you had enough? I'm angry." Celestial Venerable Ling was beyond excited, and her expression was slightly in a daze. Beside her, the old man suddenly exploded with a world-astonishing aura, which caused the surrounding space to split and crackle. Celestial Venerable Ling looked at this elder, who was growing taller and taller. She could only see his tenacious corporeal body, which was as strong as an ancient god's. The anger of the old bull couldn't be restrained, and his voice rang through the celestial heavens, even raising some waves in the celestial river. In the sky, cracks in space were everywhere. The jade pool treasured land didn't seem to be able to contain the corporeal body of this elder. Neo Ben is so strong. Besides Celestial Venerable Yu, Son of Heaven Yin stared with his eyes wide open, and he looked at Neo Sanduo, whose head was in the clouds. His eyeballs almost popped out of the socket. He knew this person called Neo Ben was very strong and almost crashed the big Qin the moment he boarded. However, he didn't know this plain-looking Neo Ben was actually so strong. He was so strong that even the sky couldn't withstand his aura anymore. He was so strong that he suppressed the entire jade pool meeting the moment he made a move. In the jade pool, those huge turtles carrying islands on their backs were also half-gods. They naturally had a powerful bloodline, as they were the descendants of ancient gods. Yet even with their powerful abilities, these huge turtles didn't dare to show themselves in front of Neo Ben's aura. They just tucked their heads and limbs into their shell and sunk into the sea, leaving the divine arts practitioners on the islands to scramble to the top so they wouldn't drown in the jade pool. As strong as ancient gods. Celestial Venerable Yu and the other few Celestial Venerables had pale faces as they looked up at the furious god. They had a myriad of emotions mixed in their hearts. It was especially so for Celestial Venerable Yu. For this jade pool meeting, he had been running up and down the celestial heavens, communicating with Celestial Empress and even having to bribe people around Celestial Emperor to praise him in front of Celestial Emperor. Not only that, he even had to create such a huge influence to attract all of the young talents from all worlds to attend this jade pool meeting. He had borrowed the power of the Celestial Heaven meeting to be able to host the jade pool meeting and create such a bustling event. And this time, he had also wanted to borrow the chance to announce a huge matter that would gather everyone's attention. He was to make use of this chance to become the leader of all divine arts practitioners, and even the leader of half-gods. He wanted all races in the world, including the offspring of ancient gods, to be pulled into his camp. In this way, half of the Celestial Heavens meeting's profit would fall into his hands and become his capital to rise up. Yet never did he expect two youths to suddenly appear in the jade pool meeting and fight without restraint. These two people had exhibited unmatched magnificence and astonished everyone that was attending the meeting. They had completely stolen the limelight from him. What he expected even less was a strong practitioner equivalent to an ancient god jumping out from nowhere. He had utterly no idea if the jade pool meeting could even continue. If this strong practitioner lost his temper and wreaked the entire jade pool, wouldn't all his efforts be for naught? Neo Sanduo showed his incomparably muscular body and spewed out smoke from his nose. With his fiery eyes, he raised his hands to press down. Before his hands could even touch Qin Mu and Founding Emperor, both of them instantly felt an incomparably terrifying pressure. Bang, bang. Two dull sounds rang out. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor's divine arts broke down, and both of them fell from the sky. They were pressed down on the ground by an invisible pressure. The ground sank as both of them were pressed down, sinking deeper and deeper. They couldn't move, and they were overwhelmed with shock. You dare to beat him? Qin Mu was surprised and furious. He raised his head forcefully and said, "When you beat him, you are beating me, you damn bull." Neo Sanduo's furious voice came from mid-air. Create more trouble. Come and create more trouble. How many times have I told both of you on the journey, restrain yourself and don't create trouble, both of you just have to create trouble. Do you really think I have no temper at all? If my bull temper comes up, I don't care who you are. Stop pressing down on them. Celestial Venerable Ling stood beside the bull's legs and looked towards where Qin Mu and Founding Emperor had crashed. There was already a huge pit that was 300 yards deep, and so she hurriedly raised her head. If you continue to press down on them, you will squash them to death. However, Neo Sanduo's body was too tall, so her voice couldn't reach his ears. Right at this moment, a loud and clear voice rang out, and it sounded like the cry of an eagle. Who dares to wreak havoc in the celestial heavens? The swift fire was like a meteor, as a beam of flames grew larger and larger as it came attacking towards Neo Sanduo like a sun. Neo Sanduo stretched his hand and crushed the sun before roaring. Roar. Even though the great Sun Sovereign was a natural-born sacred god, he couldn't stabilize himself from the waves of the roar, causing him to fly back. He wasn't the fake great Sun Sovereign in the future, so he immediately flapped his wings to reveal his true form. Layers of feathers spread out, and his flaming feathers reached for the sky. His wings were 100 miles in length, and his 3 sharp claws were glistening with a cold sheen. Flapping his wings, he came to the top of the jade pool and grasped towards Neo Sanduo's head, planning to shatter his skull and brain. Neo Sanduo punched over, and the sky gave off a dull boom. The great Sun Sovereign gave out an astonished cry before tumbling away. Far away, a ball of fire suddenly appeared on a sun. He got bashed into that sun and couldn't get up for a while. On the other side, from the celestial palaces of the celestial heavens, ancient gods and half-gods rose into the sky and hurried over to the jade pool. The aura of the ancient gods covered heaven and earth, warping space. Someone could be heard shouting loudly, "Where is this vermin from, to dare to be reckless in the celestial heavens?" Nyo Sandwa's temper had rushed to his head. He didn't care anymore and just leaped into the sky to start punching and kicking. He executed all of his cultivation without holding back. No matter what divine art was thrown at him, he could easily wipe out the divine arts of these ancient gods with a punch. He was overwhelming everything with pure strength. Even the ancient gods of the sun, moon, and 5 elements couldn't block him at all. Their divine arts shattered right away. Nyo Sandwa's attainments in the martial path were extremely high, and his speed was extremely fast. The sprinting speed of a strong practitioner on the martial path was something a divine arts practitioner could never hope to reach. Furthermore, he was a strong practitioner on numinous sky realm. He was only inferior to Emperor's throne, so it was impossible for them to capture his figure. In the sky, an ancient god grunted as he got punched in the face. He came crashing down head first into the jade pool. His body and legs were straight, and his life and death was unknown. Another ancient god got blown into the celestial river, and created quite a huge wave which raised up the pleasure boats. When the boats sailed on the 30,000-yard wave, it created quite a shock. There was also an ancient god, who received countless blows in an instant. Every blow would bend his body and warp his face, so his mind was completely blank. When he came back to his senses, he realized he was in a pile of rubble. Beneath him was the palace he had crushed. Nyo Sandwa went all out and vented all the grievances he had suffered for the past 2 days. He was truly scared for the past 2 days. He was always afraid that Qin Mu would create some huge trouble, afraid that Qin Mu and Founding Emperor would start fighting, afraid that Founding Emperor would recognize him, afraid that Founding Emperor would get rid of Qin Mu, and also afraid that Qin Mu would get rid of Founding Emperor. How could all these grievances be carried by a man who was straightforward and to the point? Yet he had no choice but to bear it. When his dissatisfaction suddenly burst forth today, it couldn't be stopped anymore. A strong practitioner on the martial path was just like that. It was fine if he didn't explode, but the moment he exploded, it was earth-shattering. Not even a bull could pull him back, and he was a bull to begin with. Nyo Sandwa became more and more excited as he fought. More and more ancient gods and half-gods gathered around him, and he couldn't resist mooing loudly, wanting to beat down all of them. Suddenly, a sun burst forth with dazzling light from the sky, and a beam of light shot over to hit him on the body. This old bull got blown away. On the sun, the great sun sovereign wiped away the golden blood at the corner of his lips, and his magic power burst forth. He controlled the firepower of the sun, and the sun burst forth with another pillar of light, blowing away Nyo Sandwa, who had yet to stabilize his footing. On the other hand, the moon in the sky also burst forth with light, and the 2 pillars of light smashed onto Nyo Sandwa's body, causing him to smash down from the sky and land beside the celestial river. The 5 element stars in the sky also shone brightly. It was obvious that the 5 elements star sovereigns were also using all kinds of methods to control the 5 element stars as they planned attack together. "Do you really think I'm scared?" Nyo Sandwa roared and stretched his hand to grab the celestial river. The celestial river trembled violently, and he was actually planning to pick the celestial river up as a weapon to sweep away the stars. Countless divine arts practitioners in the jade pool felt their blood run cold. Qin Mu crawled out from Nyo Sandwa's palm print, and patted the dust off his body. With a gloomy face, he said to Founding Emperor, "He dares to beat you, don't worry, I'll help you beat him up in the future. This bull is mad, he's truly mad." Beside him, Founding Emperor stretched his body and was slightly stunned when he heard what he said. "Isn't he my opponent? Why is he helping me to beat him up? This person is truly weird." He clearly sees me as an enemy yet is protecting me now that I got beaten up by Nyo Ben. Celestial Venerable Ling hurriedly flew over and said, that elder created too big of a commotion. The 36 palaces have been alarmed by him. This isn't going to be easy to clean up. Qin Mu snorted and said indifferently, he can solve this crisis. As long as he tears off that yellow joss paper, no one will be able to recognize him. However, this dumb bull is probably too engrossed in fighting that he has completely forgotten about how to tide through this. When he's tired, he will remember. Celestial Venerable Ling examined them curiously and thought to herself, the relationship of these three people is truly weird. The celestial river trembled, and Nyo Sanduo almost lifted up the celestial river to use it as a spirit weapon. At this time, a dull voice came from the depths of the celestial heavens. I'm born from the celestial river. If you use it as a weapon, wouldn't my house be ruined by you? You can't move the celestial river. Nyo Sanduo instantly felt the celestial river becoming incomparably heavy. Furthermore, it was becoming heavier and heavier, causing his body to bend down. He threw away the celestial river and jumped out. He saw an ancient god walking over to him on the river surface, and behind the back of the ancient god, the apparition of a huge black tortoise god appeared. There was a flying serpent coiled around the tortoise, and it opened its huge mouth that could swallow heaven to spit its tongue out. The snake's eyes were vertical, and it looked very sinister and strange when it stared at him. Nyo Sanduo was astonished, and he finally came back to his senses. Yet at this moment, green light filled the sky in the east, and another elder walked over. Behind him, there was a huge green dragon coiling behind him, and it looked extremely gigantic. Could it be North Deity, an East Deity of the four deities? Nyo Sanduo blinked and gripped his fist tightly. He got excited. Is the North Deity, an East Deity of this era stronger than the future? Won't I know once I fight them? I'm not afraid of them at all. Right at this moment, a voice higher than the 9 heavens came down and said, Qin Mu, Qing Long, there's no need to bully him. This little Dao friend has cultivated quite the ability. It should be because I have never heard of him and didn't invite him to this celestial heavens meeting, therefore, he couldn't accept the result, thus he wanted to create some trouble. North Deity bowed and said, Your Majesty, he has come to create trouble in the celestial heavens meeting. If we don't kill him, where is the awe of the celestial heavens? I feel we should slay him and let him serve as a warning. Nyo Sanduo's heart trembled violently. Celestial Emperor. The one who had spoken earlier is Celestial Emperor. If they want to kill me, how should I escape? That voice said with a chuckle, Why do the celestial heavens need to establish our awe? Do we still have an enemy in this entire world? That bull, with your abilities, you are worthy to be a master of a celestial palace. However, since you have wreaked havoc, that's also a crime, and I'll have to punish you. After the celestial heavens meeting, you can come to the palace and be the golden commander in front of my throne. Nyo Sanduo hurriedly bowed, and a beam of light descended down from the sky. It landed in the hand of the old bull, and it was a commander's seal. Nyo Sanduo scratched his head, and hung the commander's seal of the golden commander on his body. Consider yourself lucky. North Deity retreated, and the celestial heavens regained its calmness. That elder walking from the east also faded away and vanished. Nyo Sanduo hurriedly returned to his normal size, and returned to the jade pool. He said to Qin Mu, Celestial Emperor of the celestial heavens saw my abilities, and conferred me as the golden commander. He didn't kill me. Qin Mu shook his head and said, You have created such a huge commotion that the punishment would be light if he sends you to the god execution stage to sever your head. I originally thought you were mature, never would I expect you to be even more overboard than Qin Kai. Founding Emperor grunted and looked at the sky like nothing was wrong. The old bull said, If both of you didn't create any trouble, would I have been angered. Just keep yourself in check, and create less trouble. Let us pass these few months in safety. Qin Mu looked at the commander's seal around his waist. His heart stirred, and he said, "Show me your commander's seal." The old bull took down the commander's seal and handed it over to him. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he was about to flip through his Daotai sack, when a young man, with a face full of smiles, walked over. He asked Celestial Venerable Ling, "Celestial Venerable Ling, these three senior brothers are?" "I have no idea either." Celestial Venerable Ling only came back to her senses now and asked Qin Mu, "What are your names?" Part 284. Brother Qin, Brother Mu. Son of Heaven Yin appeared behind this young man, and he said with a smile, "And also Senior Nyo Ben. You guys have created an enormous disaster. This jade pool belongs to Celestial Empress. Now that you have smashed it into bits, Celestial Empress might cause trouble for you. Celestial Venerable You, these three are the Senior Brother Qin Kai, Senior Brother Mu Qing, and Senior Nyo Ben I've mentioned to you earlier." Only then did Celestial Venerable Ling know their names, and it was even their fake name. She was completely focused on researching, so she was slightly slow in other matters. She felt Qin Mu and Founding Emperor were friends on the same path as her, so she forgot to ask for their names. Qin Mu looked at that young man and thought to himself, "His Celestial Venerable You. The first person to open up the spirit embryo divine treasure." Celestial Venerable You was the person who had determined the divine treasure's cultivation system, and he could even be the person who had opened up the Celestial Palace's cultivation system. He awakened his spirit embryo, and even allowed the primordial spirit to soar into the Celestial Palaces. It might be common to the people in the future, and even though it was very difficult, there were still countless gods that had managed to do so. Yet to the people in the past who didn't know how to cultivate, this was definitely a grand feat that was as good as the creation of the world. Celestial Venerable You had created the divine treasure's cultivation system from nothing, so he was definitely worthy of the title of Celestial Venerable. Qin Mu examined Celestial Venerable You, and he was like jade. He was gentle, tranquil, and calm. He stood there like a jasper tree, his gaze was like exquisite dews, and his heart was full of colors. Qin Mu greeted, and he said with a smile, "I've long heard of Celestial Venerable You's great name, only now did I finally meet you. You truly live up to your name." Celestial Venerable You said, "Brother Mu and Brother Qin's paths, skills, and divine arts earlier have astonished the Jade Pool, and this made me realize there are always people that are better. Senior Nyo Ben's abilities are even shocking and made me envious. Forgive me for being slow-witted for not hearing the names of the three of you. May I ask where you have come from?" Qin Mu and Founding Emperor looked at each other in the eye, and Founding Emperor said politely, "We are people from small places. The name of Celestial Venerable You is known throughout the world, and since you are hosting the Jade Pool meeting, we had come when we heard the news. It's just that our tempers aren't good, so we will start fighting once we fall out. We were impudent, may we seek Celestial Venerable You's forgiveness." Celestial Venerable You smiled and said, "This is not a problem. This place is destroyed, but I've already gotten people to come and fix it. This isn't a place to talk. Why don't three guests come to our small construction in the Jade Pool, that Celestial Empress's side palace? It's much sturdier than this place." Celestial Venerable Ling wasn't too willing, and she was about to give her opinion when Celestial Venerable You smiled and said warmly, "Celestial Venerable Ling, your palace is also destroyed, so it's not a place for you to settle down in. Let's go to the Empress side palace." Celestial Venerable Ling gave it some thought, and could only nod her head. Celestial Venerable You led the way in front, and his gaze sparkled. "Brother Qin, Brother Mu, I see both of your paths, skills, and divine arts are refined and out of the ordinary. Your techniques are sacred and surpassed every living being. Both your attainments are already extremely high and reached a level that I don't even understand. May I ask, who did both of you learn from? We figured out things blindly, Qin Mu grunted. Founding Emperor said with a smile, our temper isn't good, so we fight every time we meet. As we fought, our paths, skills, and divine arts became better and better. Celestial Venerable, you is the genius, you created divine arts and bless the future generations, you impress me. Son of Heaven Yin revealed a look of suspicion and thought to himself, back on the big Kuan's back, they seem to have just met for the first time, they don't know each other. Why is Qin Kai saying the more they fought, the more their paths, skills, and divine arts improved? This sentence doesn't seem to be the truth. Even though he thought of this point, he didn't clarify. Celestial Venerable Yu frowned slightly and said with a smile, I won't force both of you if you don't want to delve into detail. Even though there are numerous divine arts practitioners that are attending this meeting, and there are so many talents, the one that is truly worthy to look at are the three of you. After crossing this floating bridge, it will be the small construction in the Jade Pool, it isn't destroyed. In front, a floating bridge stretched across the sky, and there was no support. The bridge extended continuously and floated on the sea. Numerous divine arts practitioners walked on the bridge and headed for the other island. Qin Mu looked back and saw that the treasured island of the Jade Pool was heavily damaged by them. Numerous half-gods flew over and were repairing those palaces that were destroyed. Celestial Venerable Yu looked at the shimmering sea surface as he walked. Far away, two ancient gods pulled out that ancient god that was stuck in the sea. That ancient god had fainted from the old bull's beating, and his head was stuck in the sea. There were also some old turtles rising up to the sea surface. The sacred mountains rose from the bottom of the sea, and the sea water flowed down the mountain to form waterfalls. This was the destruction caused by the old bull's temper. Celestial Emperor's breadth of mind is very wide, he won't take it to heart. Celestial Venerable Yu said with a smile that was not a smile, however. Celestial Empress would throw a small tantrum, the three of you need to be slightly careful. Celestial Venerable Yu. He stopped a youth, and that youth was also walking toward the small construction of the Jade Pool. As he was walking, he was throwing rune after rune into the sea surface with utter boredom. Qin Mu's heart stirred. The runes that this Celestial Venerable Yu was throwing seemed similar to the writings of Yudu. When the runes got thrown into the sea, he blew up several huge fishes. Celestial Venerable Yu who opened up the life and death divine treasure. Why does he have the temper of a child? He was puzzled. Celestial Venerable Yu had a small pigtail soaring upwards, and he had a snot bubble coming out from his nostril. On the back of his head was a devil mask, and the mask was a smiling face. Yet under the eyes of the mask had a streak of tear each. This Celestial Venerable seemed to be different from the other few Celestial Venerables. He seemed to keep to himself, and even when Celestial Venerable Yu was talking to him, he didn't seem to want to pay attention to him. He looked at Celestial Venerable Yu before turning to look at Qin Mu and Founding Emperor. After that, he continued to throw his Yudu runes in boredom. Qin Mu looked at Celestial Venerable Yu curiously. He had opened up the life and death divine treasure, so it was natural he was proficient in Yudu runes. He must be skilled in Yudu divine arts as well. In this ancient era, being skilled in Yudu divine arts meant he understood life and death. This was already a very remarkable achievement. Celestial Venerable Yu. Qin Mu took out a small booklet and asked with a smile, "Can I get your autograph?" Celestial Venerable Yu took a glance at him and suddenly became excited when he saw the heart of his brows. "The eye in the heart of your brows looks strange." Qin Mu was astonished and said with a smile, "You've seen through me. My abilities are too strong, so I have to seal my eye, this is to prevent me from causing any trouble." Celestial Venerable Yu raised his hand and wanted to peel off the willow leaf, but Qin Mu hurriedly blocked. Celestial Venerable Yu was instantly unhappy. He jumped down from the floating bridge. "I'll not take a look at it then, I don't care." Qin Mu looked down the bridge, and saw that Celestial Venerable Yu didn't land on the sea surface. Instead, he took out a small paper boat, and it expanded in size. He landed on the paper boat, and that boat sailed towards the island that the small construction was on. This paper boat. Qin Mu was stunned. That devil mask behind Celestial Venerable Yu's head suddenly opened its mouth and stuck his tongue out at him. Qin Mu jumped in shock, and that mask changed back to normal. "Don't take it to heart. Celestial Venerable Yu always has the temper of a child." Celestial Venerable Yu said, "He lost his father when he was very young, and it was his mother who brought him up. However, his mother was frail and sick, she was always plagued by illness. When I first met him, he already didn't like to talk. He was only 10 and was taking care of his mother, who was paralyzed in bed. He told me he wanted to create a method so that his mother wouldn't die. After several years, he opened up his life and death divine treasure." Founding Emperor said, "He is a filial child, however, opening the life and death divine treasure can't save his mother's life." Son of Heaven Yin, who was on the side, said, "I heard his mother died before he opened up the life and death divine treasure, and he kept to himself even more. He even said he was going to see Earth Count and snatch his mother's soul back, his truly daring." He shook his head. Celestial Venerable Yu said, "Actually, he has already met Earth Count." Son of Heaven Yin was slightly stunned. Celestial Venerable Yu continued to say, "When he opened up the life and death divine treasure, Earth Count had come to see him. He pleaded with Earth Count to take back the title of Celestial Venerable. He didn't want Earth Count to grant him immortality either. He only pleaded for his mother to never die. Yet at that time, his mother had already died, and her soul had entered Yudu. Earth Count is impartial, and he won't change the rules of Yudu for him. That's why he said he was going to enter Yudu to snatch his mother's soul back." Qin Mu looked at the paper boat that had floated over, and the figure of another person appeared in his mind. That person was also boarding a small boat, and it was the elder who always sat under the lantern at the bow of the boat. Would he be that benevolent saintly king equal to heaven? If he was, how did Celestial Venerable Yu become benevolent saint king equal to heaven over the years? Had he managed to save his mother from Earth Count? The paper boat sailed forward silently, and the youth on the boat wore an expression that cries in his smile. Qin Mu was stunned. He recalled his own mother. Celestial Venerable Yu said, "Brother Mu seems to have a load on your mind." Qin Mu forced a smile. "When I see Celestial Venerable Yu, it reminds me of myself. Fellow sufferers empathize with each other." Celestial Venerable Yu seemed to be in deep thoughts, and he said with a smile, "With Brother Mu's current abilities, it's natural for you to be conferred the title of Celestial Venerable as well. I'm prepared to report to Celestial Venerable, and he might confer Brother Qin and Brother Mu as Celestial Venerable Qin and Celestial Venerable Mu. When that time comes, there will be 9 Celestial Venerables." He laughed loudly. Son of Heaven Yin didn't have a good expression, and a hint of disappointment and jealousy couldn't help growing in his heart. Founding Emperor shook his head and said, "The title of Celestial Venerable is given to people with great achievements. I'm not worthy to have that title. Brother Mu and I." Qin Mu sneered and said, "Don't call me Brother Mu, I'm unworthy." Founding Emperor raised his eyebrow and snorted. Behind them, the old bull who had been keeping silent gave a cough, and he revealed an obvious hint of threat. Celestial Venerable Yu saw these and gave a slight smile. "These 3 people are really weird." Founding Emperor continued to say, "Even though Mu Qing and I have great paths, skills, and divine arts, we don't have any world-astonishing achievements, we are unworthy of this title." Celestial Venerable Yu laughed and said, "Both senior brothers, if both of you aren't worthy, who else is worthy? The battle you two had on the Jade Pool Treasured Island was far more than breathtaking. It was simply universally stunning. Truth to be told, I feel that my paths, skills, and divine arts aren't bad, and the only ones in the world that could surpass me are ancient gods, the rest are all ordinary. However, when I met both of you, only then did I know the immensity of heaven and earth, only then did I know what true paths, skills, and divine arts are. Both of you are the founders of paths, skills, and divine arts. Only the two of you are worthy of the Celestial Venerable title. He said with a smile, if you feel you are unworthy, we, the 7 Celestial Venerables, will have to be stripped of our title and return into seclusion. Qin Mu blinked his eyes. This Celestial Venerable you was indeed a hero among the people. No matter if it was his words or his works, they all made people felt like they were being bathed in the spring wind. He was really smooth and slick. This kind of person was a natural leader, and he could make people have a very good impression of him subconsciously. In front, they had come to the small construction of the Jade Pool. When they arrived, only then did Qin Mu know what was small construction. It was normal for the palace to be luxurious. This was the side palace of Celestial Empress after all. However, the most shocking part was that this palace was simply too huge. It was huge beyond belief. Just the pillar in front of the door was over 600 yards. Everything here was several hundred times to 1,000 times bigger than ordinary-sized objects. One could imagine the Celestial Empress, who lived here, was probably 100 times taller than ordinary people. Celestial Venerable, you said, after the Celestial Heavens meeting ends and the name of the Celestial Heavens is determined, I will send a memorial up and request Celestial Emperor to confer the title. Qin Mu gave his thanks and said with a smile, if I'm able to have the title of Celestial Venerable, I will definitely be full of gratitude to Celestial Venerable you. Founding Emperor frowned. This person called Mu Qing truly knows how to curry favor. The old bull beside him coughed, and Founding Emperor could only hold himself back to prevent this god from going crazy again. Celestial Venerable you laughed and said, this is a small thing, you guys deserve it. I'm just helping to fight for it. Truth to be told, I want to do 2 things in this Jade Pool meeting. The first is that I found a way to become immortal and push all of the divine arts practitioners in the world one step further, for them to be equal to gods. Furthermore, their cultivation will also grow higher and higher. The second thing is... When he was about to say the second thing, Celestial Venerable how? The other youth heard Son of Heaven Yin's call, and he turned his head back to look at everyone. He revealed a smile and greeted, Celestial Venerable you, these few friends sure have superior abilities. You have roped them in just like this. Celestial Venerable you laughed and said, it's not roping them in, Brother Qin and Brother Mu are both highly virtuous people, and they can't be missing from this Jade Pool meeting. I'm preparing to send a memorial up to His Majesty, and request for 2 Celestial Venerable titles. There will be 9 Celestial Venerables with us. Celestial Venerable how, what do you think? Qin Mu examined this Celestial Venerable how. Celestial Venerable how was the founder of the 5 Elements Divine Treasure, and he wore luxurious clothes that were embroidered with markings of birds, beasts, and fishes. There was also a halo behind his head, and there were 5 stars in the halo. That should be the 5 Elements star. The halo behind Celestial Venerable Hua's head was oval while his was circular. His manner was different from the other Celestial Venerables Qin Mu had already met. Celestial Venerable Ling was focused on her studies and unkempt in her appearance. Celestial Venerable you had a weird child temper. Celestial Venerable Hua was straightforward and pure. Celestial Venerable you was smooth and slick, and everyone that he met couldn't have a bad impression of him. And the feeling that Celestial Venerable Hao gave Qin Mu was that his character was firm and fierce. He would strive hard for a goal and not care about the consequences. He would achieve his goal no matter what. Compared to Celestial Venerable Yu, he was still lacking in the cultivation of interaction. However, because he was full of enthusiasm, he wasn't to be underestimated. Even though the nature of Celestial Venerable Yu had already reached such a perfect state, it was because of such perfection that he would have to be overcautious and lose out on opportunities. However, from these few Celestial Venerables I've interacted with, they are all people with outstanding talent. They aren't to be underestimated. Qin Mu thought to himself, isn't this era too vast and grand to be able to give birth to so many outstanding talents? Celestial Venerable Hao's gaze fell on Qin Mu's face. Qin Mu nodded his head in acknowledgement, but Celestial Venerable Hao's gaze instantly moved over to look at Founding Emperor and the Old Bull. The title of Celestial Venerable, both senior brothers, are indeed worthy. I have seen both senior brothers fight each other, and it was truly amazing. I'm full of admiration, but it's hard to say if Celestial Emperor would approve Celestial Venerable Yu's memorial. I have things to settle. After he said so, he turned to leave. Celestial Venerable Yu saw him off, and he said with a smile, Celestial Venerable Hao is like this, don't take it to heart. Son of Heaven Yin said, Celestial Venerable Hao is actually a half-god. Celestial Venerable Yu shot him a glance, and Son of Heaven Yin instantly shut up. Founding Emperor asked curiously, why is Celestial Venerable Hao a half-god? Why is he able to open the 5 elements, divine treasure, and become a Celestial Venerable? Qin Mu asked, why are you so curious? Founding Emperor looked at him. Aren't you curious? Qin Mu snorted and turned to ask with a face full of curiosity. That's right, Celestial Venerable Yu. Why is Celestial Venerable Hao able to open up the 5 elements, divine treasure, even though he is a half-god? Founding Emperor resisted the urge to pull out his sword and slash him. He also looked at Celestial Venerable Yu. Celestial Venerable Yu hesitated, and he explained, there's a reason within. Celestial Venerable Hao opening the 5 elements, divine treasure, was a test of the ancient gods. He is the son of an ancient god with a human. Both of them were slightly stunned. Celestial Venerable Yu led them into Celestial Emperor's side palace, and this place was already filled with people. He pushed everyone aside and said, Celestial Venerable Hao is half human and half god. He has the corporeal body of a human, but the bloodline of a god. The reason why he is a test is mainly that after I opened up the spirit embryo divine treasure, it invoked a change in the great Tao of heaven and earth so everyone can cultivate. Back then, I discovered that there are still other divine treasures. Some ancient gods felt that since half-gods can't cultivate, half-gods would be overshadowed by us, the divine arts practitioners, in the future. That was when they tried to find a solution for half-gods to cultivate as well, and thus, Celestial Venerable Hao was born. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor followed him, and they were shocked when they heard what he said. The appearance of Celestial Venerable Hao was probably a fight between the half-gods that acquired life forms. Qin Mu asked, if half-gods turn into humans, wouldn't they be able to cultivate? Brother Mu actually knows about this. Celestial Venerable Yu's heart shook violently, and he revealed a look of astonishment. Only after a moment did he say, when half-gods transform into humans, they would be able to have divine treasures like humans, indeed they will also be able to cultivate. However, half-gods are a high race, and they would hold transforming into humans in contempt. Also, back then, they hadn't discovered there was this method. Back then, there was also no technique for half-gods to become humans. Only until recently did Celestial Venerable Hao solve this problem. He has created a technique for half-gods to cultivate into humans. He still hasn't announced this, yet Brother Mu actually knows about this. You are truly remarkable. Qin Mu was startled, and he grumbled to himself for giving the game away again. In the future generations, techniques of other races to cultivate into humans was very common, thus it was why he was very bewildered. He completely forgot that this era didn't have this kind of technique at all. Celestial Venerable Yu didn't probe, and he continued to say, ancient gods see further into the future, half-gods rely on growth, and when they grow into adults, their abilities are no inferior to ancient gods, but their lives aren't long. They can't jump out of getting old and dying of illness. I didn't put my thoughts into opening up other divine treasures, and I was considering how to allow divine arts practitioners to be immortal like divine arts practitioners. Being immortal by myself isn't the path to immortality. It is just Earth Count granting me immortality. I feel that I need to find a path of immortality for all the people. After dozens of years, only when Celestial Venerable Hao opened up the 5 elements divine treasure, did I come back to my senses. However, before I could research the 5 elements divine treasure completely, Celestial Venerable Ling opened up the 6 directions divine treasure. He looked at Celestial Venerable Ling and said with a smile, Celestial Venerable Ling comprehended the 5 elements divine treasure with me at the same time, yet she opened up the 6 directions divine treasure before I did. Thus Celestial Venerable Ling is much more intelligent than me. Celestial Venerable Ling hurried him. Quickly find a place for us to settle. I still want to comprehend divine arts with Brother Mu and Brother Qin. Celestial Venerable Yu led them through the side palace, and when they reached the backyard, they walked towards a building. Afterwards, the divine treasures were slowly opened up one by one. When Celestial Venerable Yun opened up the divine bridge divine treasure, I suddenly came to enlightenment, and I finally found the way to allow everyone to achieve immortality, for them to be equal to gods. He exuded strong confidence and said with a smile, Senior brothers, please stay here first in the magnificent floor. I will still have to receive other guests. However, this time, Celestial Venerable Hao is going to announce the technique to let half-gods cultivate, and I'm also going to announce the method to let humans become gods. He had a fervent gaze, and he said loudly, this time, I will let the future life forms be able to stand side by side with the gods, to be on par with ancient gods. This is the golden age, and the arrival of 2 senior brothers has pushed the divine arts forward some more. You have shown me a vast period of prosperity. Brother Yin, let us go. He got up to leave. Qin Mu and Founding Emperor sent him off, but Qin Mu suddenly smiled and said, Celestial Venerable Yu, you haven't signed your name in my book. Celestial Venerable Yu laughed and raised the brush to write few words on Qin Mu's book. He returned the brush to Qin Mu. I hope 2 senior brothers will not be stingy and also take out your own paths, skills, and divine arts to assist this golden age to arrive sooner. After he said so, he left with Son of Heaven Yin. Qin Mu stood in front of the door to the magnificent floor and looked at the name on the small booklet. Even though it was ancient words, he still recognized it. Lan Yu Tian. That should be Celestial Venerable Yu's true name. He looked at them walking far away, and suddenly said, Qin Kai, what do you think about this Celestial Venerable Yu? Founding Emperor had a solemn face and said with a heavy tone, if we were born in the same era, I wouldn't dare to vie for supremacy over the world. I would submit to him. Qin Mu was stunned and said, you lack so much confidence in yourself. Founding Emperor said solemnly, aspiration, boldness, ability, conduct, and handling matters, Celestial Venerable Yu is superior to me. I would be willing to become his subject. Qin Mu pondered for a moment, and couldn't not admit that Celestial Venerable Yu was charming. He was indeed extremely rare to find in both the past and the present. Among the people he had met, many people had astonishing talents, many people had vast aspirations, many of them were very bold, and many of them conducted themselves and handled matters very well. However, there was none as perfect as Celestial Venerable Yu. In that case, what about Celestial Venerable Hao? He continued to ask. Founding Emperor was in high spirits and said with a smile, I have only met Celestial Venerable Hao once, and I can see this person is obstinate and self-opinionated. If I met Celestial Venerable Hao, I would fight with him to make claims as an equal, and I would seize the power of the world and gather the hearts of the people. We won't know who will emerge the winner. Qin Mu suddenly said with a smile, "What if you meet me?" Founding Emperor stared at him and didn't speak for a long while. Qin Mu revealed a look of anticipation and kept staring at him. Founding Emperor coughed and said, Your personality has too many flaws. You seem to have flaws all over your body, leaking air from everywhere." Qin Mu's face was black as charcoal, and he had a gloomy expression. Founding Emperor said with a smile, "Don't be angry, if we are from the same era, I don't think we will be opponents, but friends instead. You might have a weird temper and always target me, but I don't feel any ill intention from you. Instead, there's a kind of. He had a weird expression. A feeling of anger that I'm not striving for more. Qin Mu was speechless. Founding Emperor continued, "Your aptitude and talent aren't inferior to me, but you haven't settled down yet. You haven't kept yourself in control and become truly wise. This is where you are inferior to me. Maybe you can do even better than me in the future, but now you still haven't done that." Qin Mu nodded his head gently and looked at him with a complicated expression. He thought to himself, "Actually, you are the person I've been learning from. I want to be like you but not completely like you. Let us go into the building." Founding Emperor said, "Celestial Venerable Ling is waiting for us." Qin Mu sorted out his feelings and walked into the building with him. Celestial Venerable Ling was ineffably excited, and she said with a smile, "We are finally free from that troublesome stuff, now we can focus on the research. I hate networking the most. If it wasn't for Celestial Venerable Yu's invitation, I would be too lazy to even come. Let's quickly start." Qin Mu said with a smile, "Sister Ling, you will take charge, and we will only assist you. Whatever you don't understand or can't calculate, we will solve it for you. I can't say about the rest, but in terms of creation, divine arts and other learnings, we are both very strong. At the very least, we are stronger than everyone in the world." Founding Emperor hesitated and finally made a decision. Even though Mu Qing might be a little too haughty, but it is indeed what he said. In this universe, whether it's 10,000 years forward or backward, no one can be smarter than both of us. Celestial Venerable Ling, sort out your thoughts, we will help you perfect them. Celestial Venerable Ling was delighted. The three of them immediately started to get busy. Celestial Venerable Ling was trying to create a divine art for substances to remain still forever. She had already figured out the direction and took the first step, but the knowledge involved was simply too much and too messy. Creation divine art was merely one of the areas. Luckily, what Qin Mu and Founding Emperor learned was everywhere, and their attainments in algebra were also rare in this world. Celestial Venerable Ling's questions were solved by them one after another. Once they started their research, half a month passed by unknowingly as they lost track of time. The old bull had a good temper, and he stayed around to drink tea and smoke his water pipe. He would feel bored occasionally and think to himself, "The side palace of Celestial Empress is truly wretched. Why doesn't it have several fields? After not plowing the land for several days, my bones feel lazy." More and more divine arts practitioners came to attend the meeting, and those days, there were also numerous divine arts practitioners sitting in the vicinity of the magnificent floor. When they were tired, they just laid under the trees to sleep. The old buff puffed a few rings of smoke and looked leisurely at the divine arts practitioners that were discussing the paths, skills, and divine arts. Numerous half-gods had also come to the Jade Pool, and some of them were even flying in the sky. They didn't land on the ground. Right at this moment, a commotion broke out as countless people spread the news. The 7 Celestial Venerables are ready to give a lecture. I heard Celestial Venerable Yu is going to tell us the method to become gods. Let us go to the main hall of the side palace. Go there early to secure a good seat. If you're late, You can only stay outside to remain cold and hungry. Uproars broke out in the surroundings as everyone flooded towards the hall. The old bull hurriedly got up, and he thought to himself, I need to inform founding emperor and Qin Mu about this meeting. They have been talking about it for a long time. Just as he thought until here, he suddenly heard a world-splitting racket coming out as countless people gave off heart-wrenching shrieks. The voices were too noisy, so the old bull didn't know what they were shouting. Aren't these fellows too noisy? The people of the ancient times are also short-sighted people. The old bull shook his head and continued to walk into the building when the shouts gradually become clearer. Someone was crying loudly outside. Celestial Venerable Yu is dead. This video will end here.